Hi, I'm Maryanne Nicholls. I am a therapist and coach who helps people, primarily women, who want to work, love to work, but find themselves anxious, exhausted, or burnt out. This current series of 4 video blogs is about how to be able to say no for those of us who have learned never to say no. I want to begin this series with my personal journey on coming to say no. It was a theme that ran through my whole life in every aspect: my home life, my social life, and my work life. Of course, it began at home. I was taught that children, especially girls, should never show off, never publicly argue, and always obey our elders. Saying no to an adult was rarely tolerated. If I even contemplated saying no, I'd begin to feel guilty and worry about what my mother or grandmother would say and think of me being assertive at home. It just wasn't a thing. That led into how I behaved at church and other social situations. When I was very young, being myself was tolerated. I still remember screaming down the aisles during church service with the Sunday school teacher running after me. I wasn't punished. I was simply caught and comforted. But once I grew a little older, that sort of behavior was not tolerated, and any child exhibiting such behavior was punished, especially girls. As I grew into my teens, I developed ways to get my way manipulatively, appearing compliant some of the time, and if that wasn't possible, finding other ways to get away with it, as if getting away with being assertive were some terrible sin. When I was a teenager, even though I'd found different ways of getting what I wanted, I'd still feel guilty, and I'd also feel as though I'd be punished somehow, eventually. I began to develop a fear of missing out if I were caught, and that I'd lose the approval of someone important or influential. And so I'd spend a lot of my time worrying. Eventually, I went to university, and there I was expected to think independently. But this was a tough thing for me to absorb. For one thing, I didn't really believe most of the professors meant it. Secondly, I found it very hard to actually do. There were a few teachers and subjects who I either trusted or that I really loved, and I was able to be more myself there. But for many cases, I did and said what I thought the professor wanted to hear. This behavior continued into adulthood, especially socially with close friends and intimate partners. In work life, it continued too, but in a different way. In my social life, keeping my real thoughts to myself became automatic. I was afraid of offending someone or being rejected, always deep down, believing I was somehow less than and that this would be discovered if I wasn't careful. With my close friends and partners, I was afraid of losing them and ending up alone as a result. At work, I feared missing the opportunity of advancement and success. I was driven to succeed and be financially independent, always at the back of my mind, recalling the words of some local heroine saying she was building her FU fund. I was too. Socially, professionally, even with close friends, I constantly worried about not doing well enough, for being judged, for losing opportunity, for being rejected. You may have a different story. You may have grown up quite differently, and yet you still might feel, in the end, exactly the same way. What it all led to was this: my personal relationships that began in wonder would, after a few years, devolve into mediocrity. Both of us trying to be what the other wanted until there was no feeling left. My friendships that were based on being what I thought the other wanted, always hiding who I really was because that might offend, would end in disappointment and pain. At some point, discovering there was never any real friendship because there was never any real basis for one. In my work life, I'd always begin enthusiastically, believing the best of my bosses and coworkers. But inevitably, I'd end up working myself into exhaustion, trying to break that glass ceiling. And then someone else would get that promotion I sought, sometimes even taking the credit for what I had done. All of this in every area of my life finally came to a head when I found myself in crisis. It was during a big recession where many people were losing their jobs. I was determined not to be one of those people, but that meant working insane hours and putting up with a lot of verbal abuse. I would come home feeling horrible, complaining to my then husband, who could not understand why I put up with it. After all, he wasn't me, he didn't think like me, and he didn't have the same issues as me. Then I became ill from the constant stress and had to take a few weeks off. During that time, I decided to leave that job and start my own business as a consultant. My boss at that time supported me 100%. That decision was the beginning of a healthier work life that was exciting and filled with possibility. Interestingly, my newfound sense of self-worth and corresponding assertiveness that was so immediately successful in my career did not change my social and intimate relationships. Those changes wouldn't happen until other crisis moments. But it was a wonderful beginning all the same and gave me resources and tools for changing my personal and social life as well. Next time, I wanted to take a broader look at why saying no, even if we know all the reasons and understand them, is so hard for people like me and possibly you. See you then.